the internet, this idea of transporting ones and zeros between a network of computers, was a multi-trillion-dollar idea.
Yes.
What's the next opportunity that you see coming down the pike? Or threat,
Okay.
either one,
Well,
or both.
several things. There are trends right now that are worthy of consideration. The first one is increased and improved access to the internet in general, and that's satellite-based systems are the biggest new idea. Huge numbers of satellites in low Earth orbit. That may make it possible to reach the internet from anywhere on the surface of the Earth, which would be really cool. So that's one thing. The second thing that's happening is an avalanche of programmable devices, which we call the Internet of Things. There are great risks associated with this because if the software has bugs, those devices will be exploited, turned into botnets, and turned into either spam generators or denial of service attack generators, or they will pretend to be people and log into accounts and distort the wisdom of crowds can become very distorted by botnets. So that's a big issue to be dealt with. Looking further out, among the things that have been most important in the last decade is the invention of the smartphone, thanks to Steve Jobs and others. So why is this important? Well, those devices have a whole load of sensory systems on them. Accelerometers, multiple cameras, microphones, speakers, touch-sensitive screens, and just an incredible array of technology. Those devices can be repurposed as medical sensors. And so we're seeing a variety of potential devices, uses, or applications of these mobile phones, either to pick up information from other sensors that you might be wearing or even embedded in your body, or themselves to be the source of information. So in fact, there's one example where one of our employees figured out that the sound that you make when you're speaking carries with it some clues about the state of health of your lungs. And if you just suppress the voice content and listen to the noise, you actually will get a good estimate of how good the person's lung capacity is, among other things. So medical sensing is going to be huge, especially with devices that everybody is carrying. So the idea of being continuously monitored is very important from the health point of view, because most of the time people only go into the doctor when they're sick. So the doctor's medical record shows you're sick all the time because you only show up when you're sick. So what we need is to see what people look like statistically in a way that lets us establish a baseline of metrics of health. And then we can detect when that baseline has been exceeded one way or another. That's great for early warning. We may actually see something happening that we would not normally have detected, and that we might catch a cancer, for example, that's just beginning to grow and be able to take care of that as soon as possible, as opposed to waiting until stage 4 cancer has all of its symptoms. So I'm a big fan right now of medical instrumentation in the internet environment. I think it will bring healthcare to many billions of people who otherwise don't have any at all. So I'm very excited about that. In terms of safety on the internet, I'm fairly persuaded that we have some wide open opportunities to make hardware reinforce the safety and security and privacy of software, that they can work together hand in hand. Up until now, we've tended to use software alone, and that's not enough. We need hardware reinforced security. Looking further ahead in the 21st century, of course, I'm fully expecting that the interplanetary internet will evolve, that we will create new spacecraft that will go further out into the solar system and become part of the backbone communication system. So that unfolds over the next several decades. And as the other thing, which I believe is going to be quite exciting, is the use of computing. We'll call it computational X for some value of X: computational biology, computational astronomy, computational astrophysics, computational economics. It's using computers to model things and make predictions about them. Quantum computers may turn out to be our friend here. So I'm convinced that computing will become central to a great many disciplines that we normally think of as being quite distinct, simply because the computers have the capacity to emulate, model, and calculate in endless ways the scientific and economic interests that we have. So Google is a heavy user of its own computing resources for exactly that reason.